Well, I'm sure all of us are.
No, but you know what I mean?
It could
It's,
be John and I.
it's an official meeting, it's posted, it's made open, it's public, we take roll call, just like any other committee, so
Okay.
no issue with that.
All right.
I think that's important to move that extra funds back to it's most needed, which is on the roads.
I'll make sure. Well, they're on my calendar anyway.
Either one, just, I don't care. You can't hold it back.
John might come, but I'm gonna want to come not only just for the final.
I think it's the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. It's, you can check it, it's on the calendar. That'd be, even if you guys came for 10 minutes, just he wants to pop it and just take his time. We take another cross and make the recommendation.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no problem.
That's our number. Yeah, us too. Yeah. I mean, Daddy's adorable, Daddy's very smart. But I think I'm going to set time, put time aside in the spring.
County's a breeze. Watch it. It's not you, Bart. It's not new to you, though, by the way. This goes all the way back to the beginning. It's ebbs and flows. You get a community that cares.
Yeah, we really did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they liked it. And they like hard on all of them. This is a very tall thing. Oh, yeah. They just they're all like, go in a different direction. Yeah,
It's kind of like Congress, huh?
I could help now. So, like I said, beginning it was, yeah. Okay, I think our clerk will be here too, and we'll just get you sworn in. Yeah, nobody will be here but us. Oh, no, way more. In the summer, I'd be out in one. I could do it. Go down the Great Western Trail. Yeah. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Ted?
How you doing?
Good.
Life treating you well?
Good as you can.
Where is that? Hard to believe it. Almost.
Summer too now. Oh wait. And Paul's way better.
You know, it's been warming up, drying up. Hey, can this continue?
Yeah. Maybe you can. It's gonna be in the 50s on Christmas.
Yeah, I saw
It's been a long time since that. Boy, people are crying. He's coming.
There's no trails over
Like 10,000.
Well, that's one of the areas in the state too. A lot of the trails are in place. You know, there's a chunk of a lot of areas that if they get snow, they're good. Because 90% of the trails are.
You should go up towards like if you go Boulder Ridge. Boulder Ridge. It's a lot of trails up that way, and in other places too. All the way, actually, all the way from Minocqua, you can take some of those trails. And avoid Cameron's place. It's crazy.
It hasn't rolled enough. It hasn't been cold enough for these things.
They said people are still going out fishing in the lakes, but they said it's really good. They're not recommending it.
You know, we've got 4 inches of ice and open waters up to the yards.
It wouldn't take much to break out.
I just heard about trails and things like that. Small houses, there's tons of trails.
Yeah, brought from Birchwood. Yep.
The other side of
Yep.
155,
Yep.
Forest Downs.
Okay. Yep.
We're not on the water. It's lake access.
Okay. Yeah, it's a beautiful area, but I was reading what's happening in Violence County.
Like what?
You just everyone's like, no one's coming up. The restaurants are all struggling right now. This time of year, it'd be normal.
There's no snow right now.
There's no snow. And there's maybe 4 inches on our lake. People are going out fishing, and they're begging people not to do that. It's really
Oh, yeah. I think last year from the county that went on the water. I don't know if the water could be
a lot of it's snowmobile.
go right underneath
That
it.
caused most of them.
Oh, one happened during the day, which I still couldn't figure out. It's the afternoon, right after 70. How fast could you be going on those trails right on 70?
Well, the problem with the daytime.
Oh, yeah, so this is the village
There's
trustees.
nighttime.
All the business of the village.
But the daytime,
We're
you
just
got
like,
headlights.
we could
There are
just
no
on
lights.
a rubber stand where they could bring up a whole thing there, you know.
But
Depends on the mood and all these things.
Bars want to take it.
Yeah, I figured.
Monday morning, winter?
All winter?
You gotta find out
Oh, you're gone.
probably.
You stay here?
We were actually over there.
After the New Year's, we're going on the 4th.
How long do you stay down?
I'm going to stay out for like a week and a half.
Just a week and a half? Why don't you stay? We get.
Oh, I think I know which one that's where it's around here. That's, yeah, that one is about 6 or 7 homes down the road.
Where's that?
And the neighbor to one was caretaking the home hit by lightning. And referring to the department. Like nothing wrong with it. Oh, by the time she's it's volunteer fire here. The Indian pumpers tell us. We were at a friend's house one time and someone was really caught running out of grass. No offense.
It's like the nicest thing I've ever seen. Like
20 minutes before they just swim out the place and
money that is being invested.
you could lose your place in there.
They're like the nicest resorts in the whole world.
Yeah, they're
I
not.
don't think people even realize.
I went to Cancun and we stayed at this really nice resort that was
You don't want to ever go to there.
like 5
No.
years ago. I was like back in like,
It's not good.
Who's the one that had the heart attack skiing and passed away? Nielsen? You see the one? One of the realtors up there, Nielsen?
What's happening?
Yeah, he
Can I
was
get
in
an outlet?
his
And the guy would like
50s
figure out a
and
way
would
to
go
get
with
like
somebody
whatever
up
you
there
wanted.
in the summer, every Sunday morning, because it was like glass, and nobody was on.
We were like everywhere. Pueblos Rancheros, and like all of a sudden he was. Yeah.
No, from up there.
when I went,
Just slumped over and his buddy, by the time he turned the boat around,
They were saying
he couldn't get him in the hole.
like an average one.
There's no hole out there.
No.
when's the last time you drove?
You're up with nature.
Yeah, call Ryan later, hopefully it'll stop by.
They'll airlift people once in a while, but it's, what's the biggest hospital? Acton, Boston, something like that?
That's the big one.
Otherwise, you're going to like these little mini urgent cares. And
You got the one from the setback.
okay.
Bigger one.
Even Monopoly has its own.
Now
Go
go
to
to some of the trustees.
Winchester is there, or someplace all back. Good luck. Especially in wintertime, you might as well.
Prescott
Okay,
Island.
I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Village of Hampton Hills, December 19th, 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Trustee Bogart. Trustee Bergson. Here. Trustee McKelvey. Trustee Mamet.
Present.
Trustee Morgan.
Here.
Trustee Muncy. Here. President Woody.
Present. Please rise for the pledge. Tim, will you lead us? All right, we'll move on to public comments. Anybody?
So I'm saying you can't predict what these stupid properties is.
Thank you, good evening. I'm here representing the Finance Committee. We don't often give a readout of the meetings, and I thought I would. I'll take my 3 minutes and do that for the board. The Finance Committee met last on December 6th. We had a quorum. The Finance Committee met and reviewed the audit report, which is before you tonight. We asked questions of the auditors and went a little more in depth during that conference call with them. Got most of our questions, if not all of them, answered. And then we went on to have a discussion on internal controls and had a very lively discussion and debate over them. After all questions were asked and answered, the committee unanimously agreed to recommend to the village board to approve the report as provided to you tonight, so you know. The audit is considered a clean report. I'd like to explain that a little bit if you give me a moment. A clean report does not imply that nothing was found or nothing was corrected, but it does imply that the items that were reviewed by the auditors and what was provided by the village was materially correct. Material is generally a 5% standard of the numbers they're looking at. So as long as they're coming within that item in the field, the item has been adjusted or corrected, they'll pass on that as an issue, just so you know. The items that were reviewed, the auditors used statistical sampling to review the village books and records and picked items to be reviewed. The audit does not look at every account, nor does it look or rely upon the village to provide assurance, it does provide assurances to the accounting standards so that everybody understands that. The management letter provided in the first page, I believe, of the audit report states that it is the opinion of the audit and the auditors that it states clearly the audit relied upon the management, which is effectively the village and the people of the village, to provide tested information, and management is solely responsible for the data and its accuracy. That's very important that you understand that. What the audit did not cover, which is probably just as important, good financial internal controls are in place and can be relied upon, did not test for those. Cash receipts are properly controlled and accounted for and included in segregation of duties, did not test those. Proper safeguards are in place. These are things that did not test. The recording of hours worked in the processing of payroll. The safeguards that separate the approval of the hours from the payroll and the actual payment of funds. It did not test the village assets as far as the safeguards are concerned. It did not check the chain of custody items such as evidence, confiscated drugs, weapons, cash, or other assets in the possession of the village, and that they're all safeguarded. Not tested. Proper controls of the village funds, including invested funds, bank funds, and receivables, were not tested. Proper safeguards in the use of secure IDs and passwords specifically issued to authorized fiduciaries and bonded individuals to move village funds in wire money and pay village obligations were not fully tested. Police ticket books in the chain of custody on the village ticket books, not tested. The village board received the village board has received or should have received monthly bank statements to ensure approved movement of the funds by authorized board approvals between individual accounts, and the maximization of interest on deposited funds were not tested. These are examples, they're not an exhaustive list. There's more things that, in our opinion, should be reviewed, and I just want to make sure that you understand the audit report is strictly for the items that were sampled and tested. The rest of these things need to be reviewed by the board or recommended for further internal control adjustments or review. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
No one further.
No one further? I have a quick comment I'd like to make. As you see, we have in our meeting room, a new dais. And this was built by Mike Terrell, the former village president. I would like to make it clear, though, that the lumber was purchased with the American Rescue Plan funds, and this was through the last administration, not this administration. However, the labor has been donated by the former village president, Mike Terrell. And so we'd like to thank Mike for building the new dais and spending 2 full days putting it together and hooking up our microphones, and so thank you, Mike. Any other comments? Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I'd just like to add a little more color to that, because I was on the committee along with the prior chief, administrator, and we would keep abreast of the board abreast of what was working on it. At one time, I mean, I was the one who was pushing back on a lot of this stuff, because they looked at used ones of these and they were like $20,000, and it was like, no way are we going to spend this kind of money. And so this was basically, I think, donated labor, and I think it cost $2,000 for the lumber. So the person came way under budget. So I think it turned out to be a pretty good deal.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Any other comments? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Anything to remove from the consent agenda? The warrant, for that change. Okay, somebody remove the warrant, B, the bills. Moved by, we have a change, that's why.
Let's try this.
Okay.
Move to approve consent agenda items A, C, D, and E.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, second by Janet. All right, roll call.
Trustee Millette?
Aye.
Trustee Person?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. You have the change?
Yes. Payments to HR Green. The last item there for the 18% of Anderson Road, that was inadvertently paid to HR Green. That actually needs to be pulled off and paid to Camden Township Highway District. So So that would make the new warrant amount $388,926.94.
Any question for our clerk? Okay, motion to approve
As amended.
as amended.
Motion to approve as amended, Muncy.
Okay, Muncy,
Second.
second by Burson. Roll call?
Trustee Muncy.
Aye.
Trustee Burson.
Aye.
Trustee Boatner.
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey.
Aye.
Trustee Millet.
Aye.
Trustee Morgan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to action items. A, motion to approve and consent of the village president's appointment of Mary Bobrowski to the Fire and Police Commission for a term to expire December 19, 2026. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Muncy.
Moved by Muncy. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Second by McKelvey. Any discussion?
Yes, I was wondering if there was any other applications.
Yes, there were other applications. Oh, go ahead.
So this is your appointment, President Randy. You supplied the application, some information, was available just in the packet. Could you expand on that? Just tell us a little bit about the person you want to appoint, and whether or not, that person has had any interaction with anybody that's currently on the fire and police committee.
Mary, would you like to say anything? Your application with me?
Good evening, I'm Mary Bobrowski. So, would you mind repeating your concern?
No concern, just, and we appreciate that you're offering to volunteer, so that's excellent. We love.
Really, an hour a week.
The people want to volunteer in our community, it's wonderful.
Indeed.
But as we've done in the past, is we just like to make sure that either the president or the chairperson of the commission, somebody has either interviewed or takes a look at the applicant and just lets us know a little bit more about that person, that's all.
Well, I've lived in Camden Hills since 1999. My husband and I have raised our 2 children here, who are now both served in the military, as I put on my application. Both honorably served, and one is currently a police officer, and the other is a firefighter, medic. And I certainly can't imagine what it's like to walk in a police officer's shoes. That's not why I would be doing this, but as the daughter of a state trooper and a mother and an officer and a fireman, I understand, or try to understand what they go through day to day, respecting the utmost integrity of what they do, what they go through, and would feel I would be objective but very fair to overseeing any positions coming before that board.
Thank you very much. Very well spoken.
Thank you,
Appreciate
yes,
it.
thank you, Mary, very nice. All right, are we, any more discussion, or are we ready to vote? So roll call?
Trustee Muncy.
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey.
Aye.
Trustee Boatner.
Aye.
Trustee Burson.
Nay.
Trustee Millet.
Aye.
Trustee Morgan.
Nay.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, I'm going to pull action item 6A off the agenda. We will discuss it at a later
6B.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, 6B. We're moving on to 6C, 2023 MFT. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, by Millet. Moved by
Second.
Millet, second by Muncy. Discussion. Scott's here, if you have any questions. No questions? Great. Okay, roll call.
Trustee Millet.
Aye.
Trustee Muncy.
Aye.
Trustee Boatner.
Aye.
Trustee Burson.
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey.
Aye.
Trustee Morgan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. D, motion to approve ordinance 23-17, an ordinance approving a side yard setback variation to allow construction of a detached accessory structure at 39W 910 Old Burlington Road. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll
Moved by Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, second?
Second.
Second by Millet. Discussion.
I can give just a little bit of background. I did attend the ZBA meeting
when this application was discussed. You'll see at the end of the findings, the exhibit to the ordinance, it has the recommendation of the ZBA, including the setback of 2 feet instead of the required 10 feet by the zoning ordinance, and that there are 3 conditions on the variation itself. That the petitioner install additional screening landscaping in the rear yard of the subject property, that the detached accessory structure be a wooden structure with siding to match the primary residence on the subject property, with masonry installed on the first 4 feet up from the base of the structure, and then finally, which is a pretty standard condition, that all work on the detached accessory structure meet requirements found in the village code or applicable codes governing the construction of the structure. So, if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Any questions? Muncy?
Yes, thank you. In going through the thought process, it seems that there were multiple aspects in the original request, which was then brought back. In other words, the size was an issue. First, it was going to be a very large structure. It was brought back down to a structure that was within the current code. However, the location continued to be within the setback in violation of the current code.
Correct.
In order to address that, as you said, there's been 3 conditions added. My only concern is this feels like that was a negotiation, and that's not the role of our zoning board. It's to enforce, it's to interpret and enforce, or allow or not allow variances or these sorts of things with zoning. When we look at what a variance is, it really is. It's hard to get. It's not an opinion. It's not a preference. It is a hardship of the land. If somebody came to apply for a variance and said, I cannot build any garage on my property at all because a creek runs through my property next to my house. The only place I can do it is in violation of this setback. But for that, I can't have a garage on my property at all. I think that would be potentially an example of a hardship of the land. That owner can't have what every other owner in the area has. So that would affect their enjoyment of their property, and therefore the land has caused this hardship. This seems to be, and it sounds great, it sounds like a wonderful thing, but I'm just trying to be strict in our interpretation so we're not always interpreting differently every time. It seems to be a preference, not a hardship. And this, I don't know if this gets to our, to the level of variance. It seems to be something that somebody wants, and it sounds great. But if we get people start presenting, well, as long as you let me, vary this, I'll do all these other nice things. It seems like it's going to be very difficult on our zoning board to determine when to say yes, when to say no. How do we maintain consistency if we're not really sticking to, well, that's the setback, that's where things need to be, unless the land makes it so that you can't do that, you can't enjoy your property like every other property owner. I don't know how we do this onesie twosie, if you would.
Mayor.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick. And then Jim.
Sure. So the hardship, I went and visited the property, and the way I understand it, the original building was at the same location, that corner that is 0.3 feet or 0.3 away from the lot line. That building was replaced with this new building, had to be replaced. The financial hardship, though, I think is that their driveway, their property, everything has already been designed and laid out around this original building location. So as far as addressing the setback issue, I think they have a valid hardship. That's not one that would just be arbitrary, where another resident could potentially use this as a precedent to say, I have a hardship because I want to put a new building within the setback. I think this property is unique in that it's already been laid out. The financial hardship would be for them to move this. They would then be taking on this burden of the expense of now re-landscaping, relocating the driveway, everything else in order to just rebuild the structure. The other issue is the size. And the fact is the rules are the rules. 900 square feet, that's the ordinance. That's the maximum size they can build a building. But I think that rule and this situation is eye-opening, and I think that the village, that we need to address that rule, and that one-size-fits-all approach for every piece of property in the village, I don't think is appropriate. Just looking at that building on that piece of property, that 2,000 square foot building, it scales very well on that huge lot. There's big barns, well, just to the south of the property. I think that we need to consider using this sort of as a precedent or for a reason to make the change. Look at percentages of property, meaning, total property, total detached building up to 10% of your square footage of your lot. A 900 square foot building on their lot is not going to suit their needs. The 2,000 square foot building is very appropriate for the lot, but the fact is, right now, 900 square feet is the rule. So you can't justify bending that rule. But I do see a legitimate hardship for having the building where it is within that setback.
And Jim was next, and we'll bounce back.
Yeah, I'll just make it somewhat brief. I wish, I did not make the last meeting as the liaison because I was a little bit under the weather, but I can tell you that having gone through the training on the zoning in the past, to me this does not meet the hardship. Ed kind of stated it correctly. And even the fact that they did take the building down, they went ahead and put some new footings down, again, without a permit or whatever. But again, when you look and try to apply the rules, and the purpose is not to say no to our friends and neighbors of the community, but it's to treat everyone the same within the guidelines. And I think once you start making these exceptions, and to your point, if you want to change the rules or whatever, that's a totally separate discussion, and it's an okay discussion to have, not maybe tonight, but you have to try to apply those zoning guidelines, and it does not meet the hardship. It doesn't meet the setback. So what do you say to the guy, the next person that wants to do it? I say you're gonna have to allow him to do whatever he wants or she wants to do. So we're opening up Pandora's box. So either you abide by it or you don't, but you can't have it both ways. You can't pick and choose. I think the committee in this case, the commission in this case, I think ended up on the wrong recommendation. I think one of the commissioners in the audience here came in late, but I think Commissioner Peggy Sue there, I think voted against it for I think some of the rationale that I think both Ed and myself have raised. So that's the concern I have. It's as simple as that. I want to be consistent. I want to be fair, and I think you have to apply it fairly.
I think Muncie, and then we'll flip over to you. He has his hand up first.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify. Number one, first clarification would be to Trustee Bodner. Good points. All good points made. Not part of this discussion though about the size of buildings. What your opinion is of that property, buildings, whatever. Let's obviously move that somewhere else. So we're not confusing the issue and focus really on this particular variance. In this particular variance, the term hardship is being used. I think it's being used in a way that wasn't intended in a zoning ordinance. So I asked the village attorney. The term financial hardship has been interjected into this conversation, and it's not a financial hardship that we're here to consider. It's the hardship of the land that causes the owner not to be able to utilize their property in the way that is intended, not wanted, but the way that it should be able to be used, by that owner. And if they can't do that, then it's a hardship of the land, not a financial hardship. So if it costs money to do something differently, remediate, whatever, that's not necessarily what the ordinance asks us and or the ZBA to consider. Is that correct?
Right, and the finding number one speaks specifically to hardship, and I would agree with you, it's a specific characteristic of the land. Now, there could be financial considerations that would play into the result of the hardship, but that's not specifically what the ZBA is to consider, or the board is to consider. I think that the findings themselves, the recommendation with the conditions, I can say that the top two conditions were already agreed to by the applicant, even prior to any of the, it was during the presentation. They indicated that was their plan, that they wanted to install screening, that the plan for how the building would look, they already had provided that. That wasn't something that was requested of them. But the ZBA, they had 4 members at the initial meeting. They all voted in favor of the recommendation, and then it was a split vote, I think 4 to 1, in favor of the findings themselves. But the recommendation was unanimous at the initial meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Janet.
I don't want to speak to the hardship of the land issue, especially since it sounds like it's technical in nature, and I don't want to make a mistake. But I would observe that we have setbacks, side setbacks, and rear setbacks to provide a buffer zone between the used portion of someone's lot and the neighbor. And my understanding is that the neighbor on the other side of the setback is open space. Is that correct?
Yes, it's open space owned by the adjacent HOA.
Right. So there is no one yard that is being infringed on.
To the side of the property where the variance is requested is the open space. Behind, on the other side of the berm is the residential property.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other discussion?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Did not the, and again, I don't know I think I know the answer, but I'm not 100% sure. Didn't the HOA do some response with a letter or something?
Not at the public meeting. There was no.
Was there one after the fact?
It was brought to my attention after prior to the meeting on approving the findings, that the HOA had indicated it had not received notice of the hearing. However, when I
You had the right address, I know that.
when I looked at the property, Kane County Property Tax Portal, the address to which the petitioner sent the letter, the notice letter, was to the address that was on the Kane County Property Tax Portal. So Village Code requires that.
So there was no letter that came from the HOA giving their objection or anything to it?
I believe that the chairman may have received an email from the HOA prior to the findings being approved, but not prior to the meeting on the recommendation.
All right, thank you.
Right, and just for clarification, the Village Code or zoning ordinance puts the onus on the applicant to send out notice and payments also made to the village to do the publication. So all of the information with regard to the notice that was sent out was entered as an exhibit in the hearing, and that included notice to all the adjacent property owners.
So I'm president of that HOA.
No, I'm sorry, you should have signed up for public comment.
We never received that letter.
All I can say is that we had all the information from the applicant, and there was a green card received for all.
So we will pursue legal options for reference.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, Tim, no? No, I'm sorry, no discussion from the audience, that's
We're the applicant.
public. Yeah, go ahead.
If you'd like to hear from the applicant, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's up to you, discretion, Chair.
Hi, Andrew Wolf for the applicant. Just a few points on the hardship issue. Illinois law is pretty clear that economic considerations are part of the hardship. I was just in an application for a variance in Lily Lake a couple months ago, and one of the points we were making was that we needed the variance to run sanitary stormwater sewer around the detention pond because of the exorbitant cost of having to move a detention pond. And so financial considerations can be part of the overall consideration when you look at a variance. You can say, what is it about the specific land that causes a hardship here? In this case, I'm not sure that the village hasn't already granted variance for the present location of the garage. Obviously, a construction permit was issued, allowing the original construction of the garage in the exact location where it's being proposed to be rebuilt. There's at least a question in my mind as to whether or not we even needed a variance to rebuild per code an existing garage that was already there. It could be considered a remodel. It could also be considered a legally non-conforming use that was previously granted, like if it was built prior to the adoption of the code regarding the setback variance, and then we continued its use throughout time. We might not even, for those two reasons, I'm not sure variance was necessary. But to make matters expedited and get it through, we agreed to shrink down to the 900 square foot radius. But just so everyone's clear, we're proposing to build in a garage in the exact location where the village has previously approved the construction of a garage in accordance with your exact code requirements. That is a hardship that's unlike any other variance that comes before you. Rarely has anyone seen a variance at a municipal level where someone's come in and said, I'd like to rebuild exactly what you previously approved in the exact same location you previously approved and to the square footage in your code. So that's a unique circumstance. So I just wanted to make that clear before everyone considers shutting this down. We would have to redesign the entire parcel, rip up the driveway, redo the landscaping, and reorient the house. That would be an exorbitant expense, and arguably the village has approved this before. So just want to throw that out there, that the can of worms being opened. I think this is a legitimate request, code compliance structure that's previously been approved. And I wasn't sure if you were able to dig up the prior variance.
Right, to council's point about a prior variance being approved, there was one, I believe it was in 2010. And that was to approve actually a pre-existing garage in the location on the property. I think it was even closer to the lot line.
It was, several inches, yeah.
And the village at the time required a variance. There was construction to the home. Second floor was being put on. And it was determined that the accessory structure encroached into the side yard setback. So a variance was granted at the time. The proposed size of the originally proposed structure was larger than the pre-existing garage, which necessitated the maximum square footage variance. So there would have been a hearing anyway on that portion. That was then withdrawn, and the applicant's moving forward with something that does conform to the size requirements of the village code.
And was previously approved. Yeah. All right, thanks everyone. Sorry to be. Oh, and regarding notice, the green cards were turned in. We hired Property Insight, a tax service that pulls the tax pins. I submitted copies of the green cards and the certified letters. We actually sent out the notice twice. So that's all we're required to do under the statute, and findings of fact were made at the hearing that notice was required, that notice was satisfied. No one from the association. Signs were also posted and newspaper publication. So if someone chose not to participate in objecting, we satisfied the requirement, clearly.
Yes. May I speak? My name is Peggy Susi from
Peggy, you need to go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Peggy Susi. I'm one of the commissioners for the Planning and Zoning Commission. I pulled as a FISA report on this because I found this somewhat of a confusing decision to come to. And some of the things that I heard just now is the fact, yes, in 2010, there was a variance by the village, but when they took down the old building, or that building, the variance goes away because it goes with the building. It doesn't stay on the property. And when they poured the footings, had they gone in for a permit, they would have learned that the permit would not have been approved because it was too close to the lot line. And they poured the footings, which are now poured for 2,000 square feet, which they have to change. So the hardship is not on us to grant because they made an error or because the laws weren't clear. They were poured because they didn't get the correct information because I'm not pulling a permit. So I do not feel that it goes with the land, the property next door. If it's 2 feet away from the lot line, how are they going to build the new property or the new building without encroaching on the neighbor's property? So I have some concern of that because of setting a precedence in what we're going to do for the future. Anybody else coming in, myself being included, I'm adjacent to the Forest Reserve. Just because it's open space doesn't mean I can encroach on our variance and keep pushing into a property that is open space. If it's a house, I can understand maybe the concern of somebody saying, but it's too close to my house. Just because it's open space doesn't mean it looks okay to do it. Thank you.
Okay, we ready to vote, or any more discussion? No more discussion, ready to vote? Okay, roll call.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Pass.
Trustee Bodnar?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Nay.
Trustee Muncy?
Nay.
Trustee Millet?
We didn't actually get the drawing with the plat, with the packet. We have a plat, take a look at it real quick. Okay.
There it is, yeah.
No, this is the,
I was gonna say nay.
President Winicky?
Based on the recommendation from the Planning Commission twice, which was a positive recommendation, I'm going to vote yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Moving on, we're going to move into closed session. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Morgan.
Second.
Trustee McKelvey, roll call.
for the purposes of 2C1 appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees or contractors, and 2C11, litigation that is filed and pending or is following and imminent. That was the motion.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Bodnar?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We'll be moving into closed session.